Deep cleaned the popcorn machine, vacuumed the aisles, dusted off the classics section, re-alphabetized the kids section, bank-faced all the bills in the cash register, and wiped down the employee bathroom.
Wow. You, my friend, have definitely put in a full day's work.
Oh, no, that's everything I've gotten done in the last month and a half.
Oh. Welcome to Rewind Video. I'm Bob.
I'm Rob.
And we love movies. Good ones, bad ones, old ones, new ones, big movies, small movies. Rob, when you spend 24 hours in Rewind Video, you're bound to see a lot of things.
Yeah.
Got customers browsing aimlessly, Blu-rays being picked up, put down, shuffled to no end. There are large swaths of time where there are literally no customers here whatsoever.
Yeah.
So, maybe there's not a lot of story-worthy things happening over the course of the day in a store, but a lot can happen in a day's time, and tonight we're going to talk about exactly that.
We are.
So, as two upstanding Rewind Video employees, it's up to us to keep the staff recommendation shelf stocked with films that are worthy of a rental. Each time we choose a selection of movies, we adhere to a theme, and this week's theme is All in a Day.
How long have I been here today? It seems like a while. It seems like about 24 hours.
Yeah, it does. That's the funny thing about a shift. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes you don't want to leave because great conversation.
I mean, I'm here 7 days a week.
Yes.
So I do want to leave sometimes. I just don't.
Right. Well, I think this was my theme. Was it not? Yes.
Yeah.
I chose this because it dawned on me over the course of choosing a lot of movies for our staff recommendation shelf that I tend to like a movie that's told within a 24-hour span of time. It makes for a good story. Some of my favorite films, like the Before trilogy, Dazed and Confused, all fit that format, that formula. And
stories can happen in one day.
Right.
A lot of things can happen in 24 hours. And I think one of the appeals of it is that in life, things don't really seem like stories unless they happen in one day.
Right.
Things that happen over the course of months and years, you don't really think of in terms of like a story with a beginning, middle, and end until maybe afterwards and you're like, oh, okay, I see how this came together. But like sometimes a day can be like a story in itself.
That's true. I hadn't considered that. But yeah, when I tell stories from life, they tend to be just a piece or part of a day, and you can do a lot with that. And the directors and films that we chose tonight, I think, demonstrate that yes, this is a format that works across genres. It's entertaining, it's thrilling, it's sometimes scary, oftentimes funny.
It's a mini genre with a mini genre within it, which is the real-time movie.
Right, and we have at least one of those.
I think we might have a couple.
A couple, yeah. Yeah, good. Well, I'm excited to get into this. My experience with these movies is that they tend to be brisk. You're not going to get like a 3-hour film within this genre, I don't think. But
I'm sure they're out there.
Probably.
But generally, if a story happens within a 24-hour period, you're not going to get a 3-hour story out of it.
No. Well, I'm excited to start talking about this. So let's dive in with your first pick for movies that take place all in a day.
Okay, I'm going to start us off with Walter Hill's The Warriors.
Ah, yes.
This is his fantastical look at 70s New York gang life. Came out in 1979. This is filed under Cult Classics. Here's the back of the box. Prominent gang leader Cypress calls a meeting of New York's gangs to set aside their turf wars and take over the city. At the meeting, a rival leader kills Cyrus. But a Coney Island gang called the Warriors is wrongly blamed for Cyrus's death. Before you know it, the cops and every gangbanger in town is hot on the Warriors' trail. Tagline, these are the armies of the night.
When did I'm excited to hear you talk about this. I'm just curious when you saw this for the first time.
Oh, you know what? I think it was one of those movies that was on cable or something, and I saw it in bits and pieces and drips and drabs over the years. I think the first time I saw it beginning to end was probably less than 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so that makes me feel better. It's similar to my timeline with this. I saw this somewhere in the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
I remember it was announced that they were making a video game based on this movie.
Oh, sweet.
And
that actually could be a badass game, especially if you made it nowadays with the current technology.
Indeed. And
actually, that's kind of what Fortnite is, I think. You know, you have your own gangs with your outfits.
Fortnite is definitely something. So I knew that this was announced as a video game, and I thought, well, I've never seen the movie, so I'm gonna check it out. And I was late to the party, but it is certainly a party.
Yeah, it's a party. I do remember this movie being around when I was a kid, but it was one of those things where when you actually sit down and watch it, in the year 2002 or whatever it probably was, and I was like, oh, like I haven't actually seen this whole thing. From there were parts of it that were just brand new to me. We actually have two versions of this on the shelf. There's the original theatrical version, which is on DVD, and the only one that's on Blu-ray is the Ultimate Director's Cut, which features the comic book style transitions between the scenes. I actually prefer the original cut.
Okay.
I think it flows better. Walter Hill's free to do it as he likes, but like I like the original cut. It just seems like more of a movie. It's a little bit more chopped up when it's with the comic book stuff.
Yeah.
Before he died, Tony Scott was developing a remake to this movie.
Is that right?
Which would have been really cool.
Oh, wow. Is that still gestating somewhere, or is...
I doubt it. Who knows? But it sounds like one of those things that probably died off when he did.
I don't think you need to remake this.
No, you definitely don't. You could definitely retell the story. Maybe a video game's a way to do that. But yeah, it's great as it is. The stunt coordinator for this movie was Craig R. Baxley, who directed Action Jackson.
No shit.
Yeah, and also the stunt coordinator for Predator and a bunch of other stuff.
It's like we just can't escape Action Jackson.
We can't. This isn't really an all-in-a-day movie so much as it's an all-in-a-night movie.
Yes.
Everybody has their own interpretations of what a day is, and obviously if you're a street kid in the 70s in a gang, your day probably starts around 4 p.m. or so. It's probably when you're getting out of bed. This is an immensely stylish movie.
Yes.
The clothes, the setting, the people. I think we talked about it recently. The 70s was such an amazing time to make movies in New York.
Yes.
It's just there's so much production value just all over the place. Every actor has like a street look to them. They all have these idiosyncratic faces.
Yes.
And they just look like real people.
Real people wearing vests with no shirts underneath.
But that's only one of the many outfits.
One of the many outfits.
The opening credits is like a fashion show.
It is.
It's just like, here's this badass gang with these wild outfits, and here's another gang that why is anybody dressed like this? Why is there a mime gang?
Yes.
Why is there a baseball bat gang? But they all have their own uniforms, but they all seem very handmade. Mm-hmm. They're meticulously styled, and it seems like they are all these gangs are very strict about adhering to their style guidelines. Like nobody is not dressed in the uniform. There's even like a gang with what seems to be garden gnomes. Yes. I wasn't sure about that, but yeah, like everything you could possibly think of. But basically, everybody in this movie just looks fucking cool the whole time.
It does beg the question, and the style that you're referring to kind of prompts this for me. Do you think this is made by somebody who has firsthand experience with gang culture, especially in New York City, or is this an outsider's point of view on what gang culture must be like without really knowing?
I don't think Walter Hill had any experience with this. It is based on a book.
Okay.
I assume that the person who wrote the book had some knowledge about this, but maybe not. I mean, I think this is a story that is not necessarily tied to a certain type of gang culture so much as just being young. I think it's like this disaffected youth that's kind of like separated from the rest of the world, and in a world, and there's a post-apocalyptic quality to this that seems to only exist on the gang side of the world. Like there is a real world out there that seems to be operating as usual.
Yes.
But as far as these kids go, there's the kids, there's the cops, and they're just at war, and regular people are hardly seen or mentioned.
It's true. Yeah, you don't really get much of a glimpse of what is happening, what exists outside of these gangs and what they're involved in.
We have regular people that kind of pop in, those kids that are coming back from the prom, and that's pretty much the only time these two worlds intersect during the movie. And the prom kids are just out. They're just like, we're just getting off the train. Like, we're not messing with this. And then Mercy, she's in the process of moving from like a shitball gang up to a better gang, the Warriors. And so she thinks she's moving up in the world, but that moment on the train is like a real reminder. It's like, well, yeah, you're moving up in this world, but like, you're not a part of, like, you're never going to a prom.
Right.
Like, you don't live in that world.
No.
Walter Hill actually said that the reason he thinks this movie was such a success with young people is that it didn't view gangs as a problem that need to be solved.
That's true.
He's like, this is just something that exists. And so this is a story that happens within the context of gangs just existing in these kids' lives. And this is what their lives are like. And like, we don't need to fix this problem. They need to get from one place to the other place. And that's the story going on here.
Right.
Pauline Kael, in a positive review, said this was like visual rock and roll, which is pretty spot on, I think.
Yeah.
But Roger Ebert had a 2-star review.
Okay.
And I actually think he's dead on with his with his critique here.
Really?
This isn't remotely intended as an action film. It's a set piece, a ballet of stylized male violence. I was like, yeah, he's right.
He is right, yes.
And he meant that as kind of like a dig, but I think he's right. He did later say that he underestimated the movie.
Interesting.
And so he's like, I gave it, 2 stars. It probably wasn't right. So he did come around on it a little bit.
It is endured in an unusual way, and it probably has a lot to do with what you highlighted. Just the style of this movie, and I mean, I think it's still quotable today.
Oh,
and,
for sure.
It's.
I knew the catchphrase before I'd ever seen the movie.
Likewise.
I think.
Likewise.
It's just one of those things that people said on the playground.
Right.
It's a super stylish, violent, street level look of street kids in New York. It's an update. It's an upside down view of what most people consider a day. It's an All in the Night movie. So it's going on the staff recommendation shelf for All in a Day.
You picked a classic to kick things off.
Absolutely.
So I would say to anyone who hasn't seen it, give it a shot. It's it's still worthy of a watch. Well, fine choice to get things started. I am going to pick a movie that I plucked from the hotel motel section of the store. And my first choice is 2001's Tape. Let me give you the back of the box synopsis here. After 10 years apart, 3 friends reunite in a motel room to play out the unresolved drama of their final high school days. As layers of denial are peeled away, each character is provoked into revealing his or her true nature and motivation. A compelling drama, Tape examines the vast differences in how men and women interpret the same event. Tagline, some things can't be erased. Mediocre tagline.
Yeah, mediocre.
Mediocre. So this is a Richard Linklater film. I love Richard. We both love Richard Linklater.
Yeah. Talk about a master of the all-in-a-day genre.
Fuck yeah. I mean, we mentioned a couple at the top. All of the Before movies, Before Sunset, Before Sunrise, Before Midnight, they all follow this format. Dazed and Confused does.
He plays with time and the perception of time, which I think is why a lot of his movies take place over the course of 24 hours, or sometimes they take 20 years to make.
Right. Yes, exactly. And, I mean, he does conversation between characters just in a superb way. And this, I think, highlights it. This is just,
for sure.
This is a masterclass in making just a group of people talking somehow entertaining.
Without leaving a room, a depressing room.
Oh, yeah. And I will get to that. It's, that's a big part of what makes this movie as compelling as it is. So not only does this take place within 24 hours, it unfolds in real time over the course of 86 minutes. Again, as you mentioned, entirely inside a motel room. This is really just like a long, intense conversation between Ethan Hawke's character and his friend, played by Robert Sean Leonard, eventually Uma Thurman. Ethan Hawke, Robert Sean Leonard, they were in Dead Poets Society together. They reunite here in a different capacity. I said that the conversation gets a little tense, and it does. I hadn't seen this movie in probably 10 or 15 years. It's a nail biter. It gets it puts you on the edge of your seat pretty quick.
It's tense.
Yes. So the back of the box teases what's going on, but the story boils down to two high school kids reuniting after 10 years apart. The unresolved drama mentioned on the back of the box refers to one friend's insistence that the other one raped a girl that they both dated as seniors. And it turns out that each of them, including the woman in question, have very different takes on what happened that night. This is based on a stage play by a guy named Stephen Belber. You can tell that this story would lend itself to a stage
If it wasn't a
performance.
stage play first, it would become a stage play.
Exactly, yeah. Linkletter shot this in 6 days for a budget of $100,000. This was something of a passion project. You know, it feels like a director's first movie almost. But he made this after Dazed and Confused, just before Sunrise. He was 2 years away from making School of Rock.
Okay.
So I misspoke. Dazed and Confused and Before Sunrise happened just before this, and School of Rock kind of came next. But the cinematography is pretty unique. This is shot on digital video. It's a lot of like handheld camera work. Quick pans back and forth between the characters. A lot of the scenes are shot in like a docu-style, kind of like fly-on-the-wall quality, which ends up feeling pretty immersive. You end up sensing that you're just in the room with these guys. And
the quick pans started to get to me a little bit.
Yeah. Right.
After a few minutes, it's like, oh, I think I'm going to have to like close my eyes or something.
Right. Because they're kind of tight shots. And so like
Very
panning
tight.
is like...
And it's very fast.
A little frenetic.
Yeah.
Why did I choose this? This is another movie that, on paper, has no business being as entertaining as it ends up being. We're just in this one room with two, sometimes three characters listening to a discussion that becomes an argument. The room is small. It's just like a cheap motel room.
Dreary.
Yeah, bedroom and bathroom, that's it. It's claustrophobic.
It smells like cheap beer.
Yes, which is in part because Ethan Hawke is, shotgunning beers and throwing cans all over the floor. But yeah, there's probably some of that to begin with.
He's also trying to like pretend he's drunker than he is, so he's literally pouring beer all over the place and all over himself.
Yeah.
So yeah, the room's gross.
The room is...
We shouldn't want to be spending time in there.
Exactly.
And actually, I don't think that we do. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
But we're stuck there.
I think that what's really special about this movie is not actually what we see on camera. This is really about three people's very different interpretation on the same event from the past. And you start to see how something that took place 10 years has stuck with these characters in different ways. There's a sense that, for at least Ethan Hawke's character, something's been simmering for a long, long time.
This is that, he's deranged in
100%.
in so many ways, and like it's crazy how this incident that didn't involve him has affected him more than anybody else.
Oh yeah.
Well, incident, like who knows what the incident even was, but whatever he thought it was has just like on some level destroyed him. And I think this movie is very instructive for like staying out of people's business because, for one thing, you don't belong in other people's business, but also like it can destroy you for no good reason.
Yeah, that's exactly right. This becomes like a Rashomon style exploration of what took place in the past, where everyone just has a very different take, and Ethan Hawke's in particular is just. It has become very personal for him in a destructive way. So there's a lot of sexual politics at play here. We're dealing with the emotional consequences of a potentially violent and perhaps non-consensual night of sex. I think this is an especially captivating watch in 2023 in the wake of the Me Too movement. All three actors do a really phenomenal job in their parts. Ethan Hawke, as we've already mentioned, is especially great. Like I said before, this is one of those movies that Linkletter excels at making. I don't think that I can't imagine a director who would do this as well as he did.
I wouldn't be interested in watching it probably.
Yeah.
Unless he was the director.
This clocks in at a 3.6 on Letterboxd, and it's aged particularly well for being 22 years old. Ebert gave it 3.5 out of 4 stars, saying, for audiences, the characters are stimulating. For other filmmakers, the film is an instruction manual on how to use the tricky new tools. So for that reason, I just think this is a captivating watch, and I'm throwing it on the shelf for all in a day.
For as tense of a movie as it is, only Linklater could have brought a casualness to it that he does. It seems like like it is a tense movie, but it's also comfortable.
It is,
You know, and we're in this small room with these people who are like on edge, but somehow there's like it's a comfortable place to be and to witness this conversation.
I agree. And I think that some of that comes from this effective way of establishing the relationship between the two guys in the room, the two friends. You believe that they've known each other. They have this rapport between them that suggests they've hung out for a long time and they have a past. So
Seems like a movie that was rehearsed.
Oh, yeah.
I know Linklater likes to do that. It's not something you see with a lot of movies, but this seems like a movie that, especially to shoot it in 6 days, it seems like they would have had to rehearse.
They did. They would rehearse like 10 pages of the script at a time, just like get big chunks. And, you know, there's some interesting... There was a Q&A panel where the cast got together after 10 years for the anniversary of the movie, and I think Linklater mentioned that they would even film a lot of the rehearsals. So like in a 10-hour day of filmmaking, you usually get like 45 minutes of footage that you can actually use, and they shot for 90% of that time that they were rehearsing. So you can believe it. It would take that type of practice to get this right.
For sure, just to get the chemistry. Mm-hmm. All right, great choice.
Thank you.
For the next All in a Day selection, I'm going to take us to a Saturday morning.
Okay. I can picture it. I've had this.
It's a brisk Saturday morning. You're wearing a coat. There's no snow on the ground yet, but you can see your breath. I'm choosing The Breakfast Club.
I love that you chose The Breakfast Club and not Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Actually, there's a little bit of a trivia about that, but we'll get to that in a second.
Great.
This is John Hughes' definitive 80s teen movie starring Molly Ringwald, Emilio Estevez, Ali Sheedy, Anthony Michael Hall, and Judd Nelson.
What a cast.
This is from 1985. It's filed under Teen Angst, written and directed by John Hughes. Here's the back of the box. 5 disparate high school students meet in Saturday detention and discover they have a lot more in common than they thought. Tagline, they only met once, but it changed their lives forever. I mean, you can only meet once, right?
Right.
I mean, you can't really meet over and over again. So, mediocre tagline again. I think The Breakfast Club is the standout amongst John Hughes' teen films, to me.
Ooh. Bold claim.
Yeah.
Not one I'm going to challenge.
But he had a run of teen movies, including Ferris Bueller, which I think I've heard that they, at least for a short period of time, were shooting both of these movies at the same time. Ferris Bueller and Breakfast Club.
Is that right?
I've heard that. I don't know if it's true. It might have been just like back to back. They definitely shot parts of it at the same high school. So they were shooting it at the same location at the same time.
Wow. Amazing how to shoot 2 movies at the same time, one can turn into a masterpiece and the other an abomination.
I don't mind at Ferris Bueller. I know you have a irrational hatred of that movie. The Breakfast Club is the one that I always connected with the most, and I think maybe because it's the first one I saw. I'm not sure.
Likewise.
I think maybe I saw Ferris Bueller first though, but this one rings true. Ferris Bueller's silly. 16 Candles, not my favorite. Yeah. Pretty in Pink I like a lot. Weird Science is kind of garbage.
Yes.
But John Hughes is one of the rare writers in which any movie he's written is considered a John Hughes movie. He's the definitive author.
Yes.
But he went on a run from 83 to 90 that is, for a writer in Hollywood, is just like incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Listen to this run. Mr. Mom, Vacation, 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, European Vacation, Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller, Some Kind of Wonderful, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, The Great Outdoors, Uncle Buck, Christmas Vacation, and Home Alone.
Bangers.
I mean, not only are like most of those great movies, not all, most.
Yeah.
Almost all those were huge hits too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's in
Wildly
8
popular.
years. So like, this guy is a fucking legend, and like, your mileage may vary on the John Hughes style of script, and like, he's definitely written some movies that are like so, but like, man, to have that run in 8 years is just like unreal. Mm-hmm. And I'd never really like internalize that. Like I knew he made a lot of these movies, but I didn't realize it was just like right in a row.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy.
Right.
But Molly Ringwald was his muse.
Oh yeah. She's everywhere in his...
He wrote 16 Candles based on her headshot. He'd never met her. He was just looking through headshots, picked it out, and was like, "That's my lead character." Pinned it to the wall. Wrote 16 Candles in like 2 days.
Wow.
He wrote Pretty in Pink just for her. He's like, "I'm writing this movie for her." He viewed her as like a version of himself, kind of this sensitive outcast with a lot to offer, but like no one really sees it. And you can definitely see that in her roles in his movies. She turned down the part in Some Kind of Wonderful because she was kind of ready to move on from playing teen roles, and it broke John Hughes' heart. Wow. He never made another teen movie after that one, and the two of them never really spoke ever again.
Really?
Yeah. He's like, "We can't make these movies together with like you playing the kind of characters I want." He was like, "I can't like it just hurts me too much to like talk to you." So like they never really talked again.
Maybe it's because of just my experience with movies, but I don't think of a Molly Ringwald film that isn't a John Hughes. I can't picture her in anything else that was.
It defines her as an actress. It defines.
Yes.
Yeah. It defines. I mean, I understand why she wanted to move on.
Right.
But at the same time, yeah, that is like the definitive Molly Ringwald.
Yes.
I think he was just. You can see it in his movies. Like he was a very earnest guy, but he also was kind of stuck in as a child emotionally, maybe, and like he had these emotions that he just couldn't get over, and so he wanted to like stay in that world. And when he couldn't play in that world anymore, he was just like, well, I just don't want to do this the same way anymore.
Wow.
But it's really a movie that understands what it's like to be young.
Does it ever?
I love how it captures those strange instances of camaraderie when you're in school. You know, when you're stuck together with some people that like you wouldn't necessarily be stuck with, and all of a sudden you guys are like best friends for like an hour, 2 hours, or whatever it is.
Right.
It also shows how boredom can kind of lead to the best days of your life, the best times of your life. This is another movie that was rehearsed, like we talked about. You can tell because they have such great chemistry. You know, these weren't age-appropriate acters, I don't think. I think they were all too old for this.
Yeah. Judd Nelson especially.
Yeah. He was like 45 when he made this. Yeah. But they have that like teenage high school chemistry. They're kids and they make a lot of dumb decisions. And like you see people going back to this movie and saying, "Oh, yeah, they do such stupid like things that you would never do. Like why would these two people hook up at the end of the movie, and why would these two people hook up at the end of the movie? Why would Ali Sheedy go through a makeover that like makes her so less cool than she already is,
right.
or whatever?" But you know, that's the kind of dumb stuff that kids do.
Yeah,
you know,
especially in high school.
Especially in high school, like you'll get home that night and be like, "What was I like?" You know, you adopt identities that like only last for a couple hours, and then you're like, "Well, I don't really. That's not me."
100%.
You know, and like that's just the way kids are.
I also think I agree 100% with what you're saying, but I also think there's something that's really true of this movie, in regards to the fact that there are cliques in high school that some people never break out of.
Yeah,
and that's your life. You just know the other guys on the wrestling team or the other guys in your chess club or whatever, and it's a shame because when you're thrust into a situation where you have to engage with people that normally you wouldn't, naturally friendship can occur. Yeah. And I love that this movie explores that, and it's something that didn't take place for a lot of people in high school, and it's a sad truth,
Yeah. Well, I think it's like one of those like aspirational movies as like a kid. You're like, man, that would have been cool to like I almost wanted Saturday detention for that.
Yeah, 100%.
We didn't even have Saturday detention at my school. What a bummer.
Likewise, yeah.
But I love the library smoking scene too. Mm-hmm. That's another moment that's like, like there's no way they're going to be smoking a pile of joints in the library and not get caught. Like they're literally smoking like 10 joints.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they were filling that library with weed smoke.
But I think that might explain some of the wild mood swings that we get towards the end of the movie.
Yep.
Where they're all like bearing their souls. These kids are really only the Breakfast Club for this short period of time. Like only that one day.
Yeah.
They'll never reform again. Not physically, emotionally, nothing. They spend the entire movie forming this bond. They're becoming the Breakfast Club, and then after an hour or however long, they disband, and it's going to be forever. And we know that.
Oh yeah, Monday will roll around,
Yes.
and this club will have been disbanded.
Yeah, we're going to go right back to the status quo,
Yep.
just like they all predicted. But it's not just the social pressures. It's what people do. They go back to what's comfortable, or they go back to their identities that make more sense to them. That that they're not used to these things that they've been trying out.
Yep.
Brian and Allison, they're the only two that I can see maybe hanging out with after this happens, but probably not. He doesn't hang out with girls very much, and I don't think she hangs out with anybody.
No.
So they're disbanded. This is a group that is there for one day and then gone, just the one day.
Yeah.
So The Breakfast Club, it's the pinnacle of 80s teen movies. It's got a great premise that brings these kids together to have probably one of the best days of their high school career, whether they realized it or not. So I'm putting it on the shelf for All in a Day.
So I love that you did. This movie is just a classic through and through. Your point about this movie being rehearsed is spot on, and it needed to be for the chemistry that took place. But there is an interesting bit of trivia regarding the scene where they're all kind of sitting together and talking about why they were in detention. That was all ad-libbed.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Because that doesn't feel... it feels like a very pivotal part of the movie, and for that to have just been made up on the spot by the actors, that's compelling.
I think I don't think John Hughes did a lot of ad-libbing necessarily, but I think he definitely listened to his younger actors.
Yeah.
I think he was very attuned to what would kids do?
Yeah.
He wasn't well, this is the way I want the story. He was well, how would kids act in this situation?
Yep.
I think there's a lot of that in his movies.
Oh yeah, yeah. He was great at channeling that. This also has one of the best needle drops in of all time. With the Simple Minds song, "Don't You Forget About Me." It's still so good.
So good. Such a great soundtrack. But that at the very end, there's 4 or 5 moments in this movie with great music. But at the very end, you're just I think. I can't remember who said this, but I read somewhere somebody was it's just a movie about going to detention on Saturday, but you feel like there's a victory.
Yes.
And that's what it feels like at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Even though the Breakfast Club isn't going to be around on Monday morning, you still had that one Saturday.
Yep. I'm sure a lot of people have seen this. It's infinitely rewatchable.
Yeah.
But it belongs on the shelf. It's such a great pick for this theme, so I'm glad you plucked it.
Yeah, it's on cable all the time, but get a physical copy and come in and rent it.
Awesome choice. Well, from there, I'm going to take us to 2006. And Rob, as you probably know, with this movie, we don't actually even keep this in a section of the store. This is permanently lodged in the Red Bull refrigerator near the cash registers. That's where you have to go to find it when it's not on the staff recommendation shelf. And the movie that I am choosing is Crank.
Whoa.
Yeah. So let me give you the back of the box here. Chev Chelios, a hitman wanting to go straight, lets his latest target slip away. Then he awakes the next morning to a phone call that informs him he has been poisoned and only has an hour to live unless he keeps his adrenaline coursing through his body while he searches for an antidote. The tagline here is, there are 1,000 ways to raise your adrenaline. Today, Chev Chelios will need every single one.
Yeah.
Not a bad tagline. No. Not really a tagline, but, still serviceable. So I got to start this off with a point of view on Crank.
Please.
Yeah. So imagine opening a time capsule that's been sealed for 20 years. And you open it, you look inside, you find some artifacts from a bygone era, things that used to be cool that look a little silly by today's standards. In some cases, you find yourself wondering why the things that went into this time capsule ever had a place in our world. But the conclusion that you draw is that the stuff in this time capsule is part of our history, and it's fascinating to pull it out, marvel at it, and realize that we once lived in a time where all of this was totally normal. This is the experience of watching Crank in 2023, at least for me.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it was totally normal.
Not totally normal, but certainly acceptable for a portion of our populace.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You know, anything that's super stylish has the chance of going out of style. Mm-hmm. And this is a movie that is just all style.
It is. And it is a particular style. Yeah. This is a batshit crazy movie starring Jason Statham, as he's kind of just making a name for himself in the action genre. He goes on from here to be in The Bank Job, several Transporter movies, the Expendables films. There's a sequel to this. But Crank kind of put him on the map, for better or worse. And yeah, this movie's kind of nuts. Directors Brian Taylor and Mark Neveldine are behind this. They are not brilliant filmmakers. In fact, when you watch interviews with them, they come across as these douchebags who probably like aspired to be MTV VJs, and like that didn't work out. So then they went on to make films. This movie was originally conceived with Johnny Knoxville in the starring role, and for one reason or another, that didn't work out, so they ended up with Statham.
Which could work on some level.
It could work. It'd be a different film. I think that actually they ended up with the right guy.
For sure.
With Jason Statham. You know, when you're watching this, you can't help but to feel like these guys did not know what they were doing. In fact, it's kind of hard to fathom how they got this financed, how they managed to like sell themselves as the right guys to make this movie, but it happened. Yeah. And you know, there are definitely more than a few moments in this. They're truly cringeworthy by today's standards, but there's also a lot here that's fun.
There's a lot that's fun. I mean, it starts off with a premise that makes no sense. Like, if you're trying to kill somebody, just kill them.
Yeah, just kill. Why are you going to set this guy up for a...
Apparently, they're unaware that, like, you can hold it off for longer by pumping your adrenaline, too. Right. So, like, the guys who are doing the killing are like, why is he still alive? It's like, well, you had your chance. Like,
yeah.
You left when he was still alive.
Right. And you knew this guy well enough to have... I think foreseen that, like, if anyone could thwart this poison, it's probably Jason Statham's character.
And even if he only legitimately had 1 hour to do it, he might do some damage in that hour.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So, yeah, dumb move by these guys.
Dumb move. But what unfolds is pretty panic-inducing, not just for the main character, Chev Chelios, but also for the viewer. And not just because of how it's shot, but mostly because of the batshit crazy things that Jason Statham does to keep his heart rate up. So we see him snorting cocaine off a bathroom floor. He shoots an ungodly amount of epinephrine, drinks more energy drinks in an afternoon than people should consume in a lifetime. He has sex with his girlfriend in public during what's easily one of the most uncomfortable scenes in the movie.
It's bad.
It's bad. It's
that's where it kind of lost me.
Yes.
Not because of what they're doing, but because of the public's reaction. I was like,
oh yeah.
I was like, I understand that this guy is on his own trip and like this isn't the real world.
Yeah.
But to have like the outside world come in and go like, yeah, this is normal. That's where I was like, come on.
Nope, absolutely not. Yeah, would never have happened. One of the more amusing instances where he's trying to keep his heartbreak up for me was the instance where he decides to headbang to Achy Breaky Heart in the back of a taxi cab just to try to keep the blood pumping.
Something tells me that wouldn't work.
Right. Yes. I agree. And yeah, through all of this, he's hunting down and picking off the guys that poisoned him. So why did I choose this? Because I haven't had a lot of good things to say about it. But yeah, I think this really truly feels like an artifact from an era of filmmaking that has been mostly left behind. And for that reason, it's fascinating to take a trip back in time. And, you know, this is the era when Monster energy drinks were kind of just coming into the world. YouTube arrives. Sean Paul has one of the biggest songs in the country. So it's a different time. And this is a fascinating pop culture encapsulation of what at least part of America was looking for in terms of entertainment. I do think the action is somewhat underwhelming. It's a lot of Jason Statham running and shooting at people, but the real draw is kind of seeing what he does to keep his heart rate up.
Especially with a guy like Statham.
Oh, yeah. Oh, fuck yeah. He's, you know, for all the credit Tom Cruise gets for running, Jason Statham's great at running.
He's a great runner.
He's a great runner.
But yeah, you want to see him like get into some real like fist fights and stuff.
Yes.
There's not a lot of that.
There's not a lot of that. I enjoyed the Letterboxd review by Carlos Adama where he said, "This is a better remake of Speed with Jason Statham being the bus." I think that's really accurate. The sequel to this is probably a better made movie than the original, but I think you need to start here.
Is it the same guys?
Yes. This was indeed not screened for critics, so there's not a lot of critical response for this. There's a vocal contingent of Statham fans who think that this is among his best films. I do think he's pretty perfect for the role. Just the right amount of like believable action hero mixed with like high-strung maniac to pull this off. But here's my hot take.
Okay.
I think Crank is the first mile of a long, windy road that eventually leads us to John Wick.
Okay.
And, I think the blueprint of these two movies are not dramatically different. We follow one guy who's on a personal journey, literal adventure through the city to take out a slew of bad guys. If John Wick is the Mona Lisa, Crank is graffiti in a dirty alley behind the Louvre. But in each case, it's hard to look away.
But,
so.
You might have something there, because this is kind of a direct-to-video action movie.
Oh, yes.
That crossed over, that started to become like more of a mainstream hit.
And, John Wick benefited from filmmakers who were exactly right for making that movie. It was made by and directed by stunt guys who knew how to shoot action, captured it well. This is not a case where there is sophisticated filmmaking on display, but
no.
Yeah, it's an interesting experience.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, it's an adrenaline shot of a movie. It's supposed to be. That's what it is.
Yes.
I mean, if that's what you're in the mood for, sure, yeah.
I'm gonna tell our customers to brace themselves for some uncomfortable language and scenes, but I said,
it's just audacious. It's just like wild, and it's not like offensive, not on purpose.
Right.
Right. Like it's trying to be trash.
Yeah.
And it might be trying a little bit too hard.
Yes.
But it's trash.
It is.
Which is not a bad thing.
Right. We have a place for trash on the staff recommendation shelf, and
because you joked about the Red Bull cooler.
Yeah.
But it is actually in the trash section.
Yes. So that's my second choice.
All right.
For all in a day.
Good choice.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm gonna take us to another real-time movie. Mm-hmm. I'm choosing the movie Deadstream.
Great.
This is a 2020 live stream horror comedy from husband and wife team Joseph and Vanessa Winter. It's sort of an Evil Dead meets Paranormal Activity. It is in the horror comedy section.
Okay.
Here's the back of the box. A disgraced internet personality attempts to win back his followers by live streaming one night alone in a haunted house. But when he accidentally pisses off a vengeful spirit, his big comeback event becomes a real-time fight for his life. Tagline: he's dying for followers.
Good tagline.
Good tagline.
Yes.
This is a small, almost homemade haunted house movie. It is that premise. It's a guy going to spend the night in a haunted house, and he's live streaming it on YouTube, basically.
Yes.
It's not exactly a found footage movie. It's a live stream, but it's the same idea.
It is. Is this how you have to do found footage movies in the modern era? Because
I think so.
We are past the point where people carried around camcorders or handheld video cameras, and I think the genre still has a place in the world of cinema, but it has to happen like this now. I think
there's a couple of movies that are not live stream necessarily, but they're like webcam conversations. Yeah, because everyone's carrying a camera in their pocket now.
Right.
But the idea of assembling a movie from videos that people took on their phone but didn't post is that's kind of a weird notion. I don't think that would really work as a movie. I don't think we'd buy it.
I don't think so either.
So yeah, I think this is what we have to do for the found footage genre now, or something like this. Or there's been a few that I've seen in the last few years where it's like, we found this footage from 2008. It can't be modern.
Well, I'm excited by this evolution of the genre because this movie does something that I'm sure you're going to talk about, which really lends to the experience, which is, he's live streaming for an audience and we get to see and interact with what they're seeing in the moment. And that provides just interesting context to
Absolutely
what's taking place. So
yeah, I don't know if you've ever partaken in ghost hunting TV shows or YouTube videos, but this
only in the store.
Yeah, this rings pretty true with that kind of content.
Yes.
Where
yes.
you're like, especially the first half where he's going around the house. But the house itself is pretty scary. It's not a place I would want to spend much time, especially when I find out junkies have been hanging out there.
Right.
And there's lots of rats and stuff, which we don't see.
Right.
But these like that kind of stuff is just, it's a scary place. It's an abandoned house in the woods. It's not a place I would go.
Right.
It's so like that just like builds on this premise of like I'm gonna spend the night in the haunted house. So it's a very winnable premise, but you do have to execute the basics.
You do have to execute the basics. And when I started this, I thought to myself, oh my God. During that intro in particular, I thought, I am not going to be able to watch a whole movie with this guy. But then my opinion changed very quickly because he comes across as a typical YouTube personality, but he's so right for, especially when he becomes more human as things happen to him. He's a great guy to spend time with.
Yeah, he's a very likable person. He is the stereotypical YouTube guy, which is like super annoying. And there is definitely, for me, there's a moment where it's like, I don't know if I can deal with this for a whole movie. Like,
right.
It should be way more annoying. But something about him wins you over pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It was surprising. But if someone was like, it's too annoying, I didn't like it, I would understand that. Like I could see how people would see it that way.
Yeah.
But going back to executing the basics, it has to be a believable live stream. You can't have this footage that who knows where it came from. There can't be any unexplained shots. You need real haunted house scares, and you need them from a first-person point of view. Otherwise, why are you doing this? And then the main character's got to be in that real danger. You have to feel that danger. You have to feel, because again, a live stream movie is a point of view movie. Even though we're looking at him a lot, we do have to feel like it's happening to us. And I think
Yes.
they do a really good job of that. They build up the history to this house a little bit, which gives us a little bit of a backstory, but also it expands this world just enough because we're in this house the whole time. And
Yes.
like it doesn't feel like we're stuck in the house as much when we like have those interludes of the history and whatnot. So they give you a little bit of like production value. Also the music that he keeps playing, which is like an interesting workaround for a live stream to get some music in there.
Yeah.
It actually works pretty well, and it does give it a little bit of production value. It seems like a real movie for a second. It's a good performance. It's really funny. Like it's humorous. It's scary. Very good makeup effects.
Yes.
Realistic blood, gore. Really realistic enough. There's some monster work here. There's some creatures that are like, they look like they're made out of rubber, but like, okay, I'm fine with that. It's a cheap movie. It's a cheap independent horror movie.
I agree. Yes. This was more fun than I thought it would be. And it was also more frightening at times because, like you can put yourself in this guy's shoes and decide pretty quickly, like, I wouldn't fucking stay in this house.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the shtick of his YouTube channel is that like he does stuff that he's afraid to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's super fun. It lives up to the premise. There's just an energy to it that I think like brings the audience along. It's a great example of a real-time movie, and I think it definitely deserves a place on the shelf for All in a Day.
This was brought to us by the fine people at Shudder.
Yes.
And they keep doing a good job.
Yeah, they especially like the little tiny independent movies that like probably wouldn't have a chance to break through anywhere else. Like it's a great resource. Almost as good of a resource as a video store in your neighborhood.
Right. Specifically one called Rewind Video.
Yes, yeah. The best of all.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a super fun movie. I think everyone should check it out.
I would have skipped right over this, so I'm glad that you put it on the shelf and gave me a reason to watch it. It's fun. They really, really understand that notion of what a YouTube influencer needs to do, even to the point of like monetizing your channel and having like sponsors that you need to plug.
And the desperation behind everything they do.
Yes.
I think that they get a lot of that right. There's a few moments, and I feel like every time there's a movie that's like has to do with like a live streamer or somebody who does something online or whatever, there's always like a few moments where like, that's not really how that works.
Right.
Like there's no way that his sponsors would require him to spend the night in the house till a certain time. All they care is that people are watching.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, they don't give a shit.
100%.
So yeah, there's a couple silly things like that, but easily overlooked. A lot of fun. It's a quick movie. Definitely watch it.
I found myself, thinking when this was after getting through this, okay, I'm excited by where the found footage genre is evolving into with films like this. I can't wait to see where it ends up going next, based on where the world goes next in 5 or 10 years.
It's really up to ChatGPT now.
It is, yeah.
It's not for us to decide.
Definitely going to be an AI horror movie. There's already been plenty.
For sure.
Great choice. Well, I'm going to round things out with my final choice for this evening, and it is 1985's After Hours. This is a movie that I have walked past on the shelves for the better part of my life. I have seen the cover of this box countless times, had my curiosity piqued by it, but I've never actually gone through the motions and taken it to the register and brought it home with me. And I'm finally glad that I did.
Me too. I had never seen it either.
Yeah. For the longest time, I did not know that this was a Scorsese movie until I became more familiar with his filmography and saw this on his IMDb. But
one of the greats, but he's also one of those guys that's made so many movies that there's just huge sections of his filmography that I'm just like not acquainted with at all.
Agreed. We'll get to him. But let me dive into the back of the box. We've talked about the front. Here's what the back of the box says. Griffin Dunne is just a regular guy in that friendly, regular town, New York City, who winds up in a hysterical series of misadventures one long, crazy night while on the quintessential date from hell. Tagline here: when it's after midnight in New York City, you don't have to look for love, laughter, and trouble. They'll find you.
That's pretty true.
True. Again, not a tagline, but
great.
Yeah,
that's like on a poster for New York.
Exactly. Yeah. As we said, Martin Scorsese directed After Hours. But if I hadn't known that, I wouldn't have guessed it from watching this. This does not feel like your typical Scorsese picture, and especially one that comes just after he's directed Raging Bull and King of Comedy, and just before The Color of Money and Last Temptation of Christ a few years later. He made this while Last Temptation of Christ was kind of in development hell. And so you can maybe even sense the notion of being in some version of hell in the story that's told here. This is mostly trying to be a comedy. It's pretty funny. It has a lot of satirical elements. But there's also something of a thriller and a little bit of a crime drama wrapped into this story of one crazy night in Soho. Cast is great. Griffin Dunne plays our main character. Rosanna Arquette is here. Linda Fiorentino, Catherine O'Hara, Will Patton, John Hurd. Cheech and Chong show up somehow.
It's got a weird tone. Not a weird tone, but it's an unfamiliar tone. So it takes a minute to be like, what am I watching here?
Yes. I would even normally I'd be tempted to dive deeper into the back of the box, give some context, but I think the joy of this film is being surprised by how our main character's night unfolds into this chaotic misadventure where, try as he might, he can't escape this small neighborhood in New York. So I would say go in blind if you can.
We've talked a lot about some movies recently, like Uncut Gems being one of them, where it's like characters is just like, what are you doing, man? Like, slow down. Just like make a good decision. This guy is just like, you can every step of the way you're like, okay, yeah, he's just like kind of going with the flow. Like he's not like trying to make anything crazy happen. It's just like every step that he takes ends up in like a pile of shit.
Yes. So Scorsese is on record saying that, he was kind of inspired by some Greek mythology here, and this journey in a taxi cab into Soho for this date is supposed to be like, a trip into the underworld where, from that point on, things are just a nightmarish hell for this guy. And I get that. Interestingly, Scorsese did not know how to end this movie. So he consulted Spielberg, Brian De Palma, Terry Gilliam to get their advice on how to wrap this up. Apparently, the first cut was like 45 minutes longer. I'm glad that he cut it down.
Yeah.
I do think that it ends on a weird note.
It's anticlimactic.
A little bit, but nevertheless, it does end.
It makes sense for like the all-night story.
Well, that gets me into why I chose this because, for me, there are parts of this movie that are somehow strangely relatable. Like, a date gone awry. I think a lot of us have experienced that. A series of unexpected events that turn a night sideways, finding yourself mixed up with some truly unusual people. All of it in one night, perhaps a little bit less common, but there are definitely themes here that feel familiar. I also think this is underrated Scorsese. It's, for all the countless landmark dramas that he's done, like Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Departed, Mean Streets, After Hours is just different. It's fun, and it's also sophisticated. It's a joy to watch, It
is. It's a little bit of a hang.
Yeah, definitely.
You have to be on Griffin Dunn's vibe.
Yeah.
Which takes a minute, but like once you're there, it's a hang movie.
Yeah.
But
you're rooting for him.
Yeah. I mean, bad shit's happening, but like you're rooting for him.
Right. This reminds me of a little bit of a Nicolas Cage movie from 1993 called Red Rock West. Where Cage can't escape a town that he's trapped in. I think this is a better movie, but it definitely took me to that as I was watching this. I was like, I feel like I've seen something like this before.
Yeah.
This is another movie that's similar to Born to Win from our last episode. Gives us a fascinating glimpse into a New York that is no longer there.
Yeah.
You get less of the city here. Everything takes place at night. But it's still a different town than the one we know today. There is a lot of this that feels dated compared to modern times. There would be a lot of easy ways for this character to get out of this neighborhood if he had access to an ATM or a cell phone or like an Uber app.
None of this would have happened, if you had a cell phone.
None of it.
Or, an ATM card.
Nothing, yeah.
There's so many movies like that. You're just like, literally this whole movie couldn't happen if the character had a cell phone.
Could not exist, yes. And this is one of them. So critical response was super positive for After Hours. It comes in a 4.0 on Letterboxd, earned 4 out of 4 stars from Ebert. I was glad to finally see it after avoiding it for too long. I did enjoy the review by Amaya that read, "Legend has it if you double feature this and Good Time, you develop a cocaine addiction on the spot."
Sweet.
Yeah.
For our last episode, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So I buy it. And for that reason, I am throwing After Hours on the shelf for our final all-in-a-day theme.
I have a take on this movie.
I'm so interested in hearing it.
This movie was made in, 1985?
Yes.
Somehow, Martin Scorsese was able to answer the question, what would Taxi Driver be like if it was an episode of Seinfeld? And that's exactly what this movie comes across as to me. And there's even a bit where he's doing where he's explaining how his night's gone up to that point, where he's standing in front of a brick wall doing like a routine.
Yes.
And I'm like, this is stand-up comedy.
Yes.
And everything that happens to this guy is stuff that would happen in a Seinfeld episode, but it does have that New York Taxi Driver vibe of just bad shit around and stuff can just happen to you,
Yep. I mean, for that reason, maybe it's not so unexpected that he made this after The King of Comedy because it does. Yeah, you're spot on. I think with that interpretation.
What is up?
Well, listen, that does it for this week's episode. Thanks, as always, for paying a visit to Rewind Video. This week, the staff recommendation shelf is full of stories that unfold in 24 hours or less. The movies we chose are The Warriors, Tape, Breakfast Club, Crank, Deadstream, and After Hours.
Go to rewindvideopod.com to get on our mailing list. You can get the episodes in your inbox that way, or also our newsletter. And if you enjoy the show, be kind, recommend.
Next time, tune in as we tackle movies that take us on the job, as we are right now.
Sounds like work.
It does sound like work. We will have 6 films to recommend, but of course, we're also interested in what you think. So don't hesitate to hit us up on social. In the meantime, feel free to stop by the counter for a movie to watch, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Hail Satan. What is up with Satan?